Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another episode of Fight Court. I am boy Dean Thomas, alongside with me, my boy, also your boy, the mighty Quinn, Ryan Quinn. We repping South Florida, but today we are talking middleweights because right now middleweights seem to have a lot of steam going on in the UFC. And speaking of middleweights, I can't mention middleweights without giving a shout out to my man Darren Stewart, who was a middleweight from London who just retired, officially retired today. So I want to give a shout out to my man Darren Stewart. Had a great career. Looking forward to your next chapter in your life. So go ahead and do your thing, my boy. Holla. All right. Talk about middleweights. There was a big middleweight fight over the weekend. UFC 96. UFC Las Vegas 96, featuring Caio Borralho taking on the veteran, the true veteran in Jared Cannonier, the gorilla, Jared Cannonier. And this was a fight that I knew was going to be good. It was a good test for both guys. Anytime you're dealing with an older fighter like Jared Cannonier taking on a younger fighter like Caio Borralho, this is always, and I hate to use the term passing of the torch, but I like to use it as the test because older fighters generally don't like to fight younger fighters. They always want to go, give me somebody my age. But at the end of the day, like when you're at the top of the division, you have to prove that you belong at the top of the division. You can't rest on your laurels. You can't rest on something that you've done years ago. So Jared Cannonier took on, and I spoke to Jared too, and I mean, he's such a great guy, great martial artist, and is always up for a good challenge. So I don't want to make it sound like he was trying to dodge anybody. That's not the case. But he took on a very tough Caio Borralho, who is sort of the I don't want to say the leader, but he's kind of the front runner of the fighting nerds, and those guys are just steamrolling through opponents in the UFC right now. So let's get right into that fight. Ryan, you saw it. You got a chance to analyze it. What'd you think of the fight?
You know, I focused a lot on what we were talking about last week with Jared's style and how it made. Well, really, we were talking about Izzy's style, but similar to Jared's, if it's going to age well and things like that. I don't think that was the case on Saturday. I don't think that this is a matter of Jared's style aging or his game aging. I just truly think that the style was like MMA is the ultimate game of rock, paper, scissors, you know, and I truly think that the opponent was just not a good matchup for him at the end of the day. And like, I wouldn't have said this on paper. But I think that the southpaw and the size of Caio kind of took away the range and the reach that Jared is used to. And I think by the time he was able to find himself winning flurries and exchanges, he was down too far on the scorecards. And I know, and even it was really big early in that first round with the calf kick that he kind of dropped. It's not really a drop, but he went down and came back up. And I just think he just couldn't get ahead. He just couldn't get off. And I think that's what it was, just a bad style matchup. So I'm going to wait and say for the next one whether or not Jared's truly aging or not. Even though, you know, yes, he's lost the last two. But, I mean, hats off to Caio. Caio kept it together. Jared did try the best he could to control the center of the cage. But Caio just, he was in front of him. He put the stamp on every exchange they had and just led the dance.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and suggest it for you. I'm going to suggest it. Age is catching up to him. And the reason why it's not as detectable as you see it in other fighters is because I think he's such a fundamentally sound fighter that even though age is catching up to him, his style is still pretty good for his age because he doesn't do a lot. So when you're dealing with fighters who don't really do a lot, it's not like he's shooting a bunch of takedowns and doing a whole lot of footwork. Now, again, like I do think that if he did shoot some takedowns and have some good top control to chew up some time, it would actually benefit his age. But he doesn't fight that way. He's kind of a locomotive coming forward, good power puncher, but he doesn't throw a lot of punches, doesn't throw a lot of volume. And I think that style ages pretty well. And I think it's aging pretty well on him, but I still believe that his age is caught up to him, which makes him a victim of poor timing for the division. just really poor time. I mean, by the time he kind of caught his stride in the middleweight division, he was like 38.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about that. Like
Mhm.
he would have been a heavyweight prior with great power and a good skill set. He's got a heavyweight striking style. Then he went down to light heavyweight and the problem with light heavyweight for him, I think, was just the height was so drastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think he dealt with the height at heavyweight better because he was a little quicker, but at light heavyweight, I think that the height differential was so drastic for him that he couldn't really make up for that. So going down to 185, I thought was a great idea for him. I think it was just 2 years too late.
I think that's a fair assessment, especially because, like it's tough to keep exchanging. And to your point, the age gets camouflaged because he does have really good defense. He actually does.
That's what I'm saying.
And
He's so fundamentally sound defensively, even though he's getting like he takes punches. But I mean, hell, he's doing he's done 5 rounds a bunch of times. So like you're going to get hit a bit, but he's so fundamentally sound.
You know, it's funny. I can't remember the last time he was in a 3-round fight. He's always been main eventing. Was his last fight a 3-round fight? No, his last night he got knocked out in the 4th. So if you think about that, like even though like he had 5 his last fights, but they're all 5 4-round fights, that's like 3-4 fights more, more roundage, so to speak, than an average, you know, and at 39, 40, like that does add up. It really does.
And he's still training hard. You talk to John Croucher's coach over there at the lab in Phoenix. I mean, they're like, he's in there with the young guys, man. He's not getting preferential treatment because of his age. Like he's in there doing what everybody else is doing. And I talked to him, and he's kind of a nerd. He was kind of a martial arts geek nerd. Like I was like, yo, what got you into it? He's like Ninja Turtles and karate movies. And like, he still has that same enthusiasm for the arts. And I find that to be interesting, which makes him a great martial artist because he's fighting to test himself. He's no longer necessarily chasing the belt, but he's fighting to test himself. And I think as long as he continues to do that and doesn't take too much punishment, I don't see him growing anymore in terms of getting better. But even with his style and his age, he can still have some fights left in him. I think he's still got some time left.
That's really refreshing to hear that's what got him into martial arts, because I remember like in the early 2000s, like a lot of people like, what you got you into martial arts? And it was stuff like that, or like Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon. Like it was still kind of that. And then the 15 years in between then and Jared Cannonier was, saw so-and-so knocking people out, and Brock Lesnar, WWE. And
well, yeah, think about that dynamic, right? Think about this. I got into martial arts because Hoist Gracie, he was a small guy and he was beating bigger guys without violence and just learning how to defend himself. And I said, man, there's nothing worse than sitting at a bar and some jackass coming up to you and your people talking shit and intimidating you. Like there's no worse feeling than that to me. No worse feeling than the idea of me being on the receiving end of a video where some dude is screaming "World Star," like I don't want that. You
World Star. I hope you guys know out there what World Star is.
I don't want that, and that's what got me into it. Like and there was an honor in that. There was an honor in learning this martial art. Fast forward to like nowadays, man. Like people are watching guys like Conor and hearing him talking trash and knocking people out and getting the girls, and like that's what's motivating kids today to get into the sport. And to me, I find that it's bit empty. Disgusting, right?
Yeah, it's empty. It's just empty. Like I remember I always kind of watched UFC on the side and everything like that, got into Pride a little bit, but I was wrestling in college, and people are telling me about this guy, Matt Hughes, this American wrestler, this country boy that's just beating all these Thai boxers and these Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists. I'm like, oh shit, let me check this out. And then the Frank Trigg 2 fight happened. And then I was like, oh, dude, I gotta do it. And just like Matt, I never learned how to box.
You never learned how to box? You only put southpaw when you wanted to wrestle?
Yeah. Stiff hands.
Yeah. But like that's a good, like if you were watching MMA in that time period, I
Mhm,
still believe that there was a lot of honor in it. There was still
mhm.
because the trash talk game hadn't really been invented, and it was still so new
No.
that all we had in that time was what we could do it inside of a cage.
Dean,
So
how
we
many
wanted
fighters
to
do
do
you
that.
think I mean to cut you off. How
No,
many
go ahead.
fighters do you think were on the roster, would you say, when you were in the UFC during that time? Because like I think all the time, like the level, like there was just the UFC and these like random like reality fighting and just like King of the Cage
Yeah,
was kind of
right, right,
around.
right, right, for sure.
There was not a lot.
There
There
was
was
not. There weren't a lot of organizations. There
yeah.
wasn't a lot of organizations. So I mean, it had to be maybe 200.
I even think that that's a lot. But
Yeah.
I because at the time you got to think too. What was there? 3 weight classes when you were there? 4.
No, it was no, I
That
think by that
right?
time we had the it was 155 was the lightest,
Yes.
55, 70, 85,
70. Yeah.
205.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah.
But there were no women
Yeah.
and no 45, 35, and 25 male. So it
Mhm.
was it was essentially PFL.
Yeah. 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 They're onto something. Of
Yeah.
course, they're 20 years behind.
Yeah. But no, but I mean there was an honor to it.
Yeah.
And Jared Cannonier possesses that to me. Like he still kind of um exudes that energy about him when he fights. So it's always refreshing to watch him fight. And it was even more refreshing to get a chance to talk to him because he was very honest. And sometimes when you talk to fighters, they're not very honest with themselves and they want to lie to themselves and in turn lie to you about their career trajectory and what they think is going on. But to me, he seemed very honest about what he wanted out of his career and what he was doing. And he might pretty much realize that a title shot is no longer in the
Mhm.
balance. And that's just what it's going to be for him. No title shot for a guy like Jared Cannonier. But Caio Borralho is right on track. Talk about, I said Jared was the victim of poor timing. Talk about the recipient of great timing, but even better gambling on themselves. And a guy like Caio Borralho, who, and I remember speaking to him at the UFC PI one day, he said, "Man, I've taken all the hard fights. I've never turned anybody down. I've taken all the hard fights." And you go back and look at his resume, he's got Abus Magomedov on there, Paul Craig, and just he really has taken all the hard fights. And he's won them all, which is why he's ranked number 5 in the world right now and looking at potentially one more fight before he gets a title shot. But that's just good gambling on yourself and winning.
Yeah, and it's
You,
fun to see that.
yeah, because think about like when you ask a fighter, and me and you, we both coached,
Mhm.
and sometimes a fighter, their first instinct when you ask them, do they want to take a fight? Sometimes their first instinct is, well, what if I lose?
Mhm.
It is, right? It's, well, what if I lose? Then I lose everything I worked for. And the UFC doesn't reward that. The UFC rewards, but what if you win? And Caio Borralho exudes that energy. Well, what if I win?
Mhm.
I'll take this fight. Well, what if I win? Then yes, you will get the rewards, my man. And right now he's looking down the barrel of all the goodness that can come from MMA. Now, I spoke to Jared last week, spoke to Caio today actually, and he wants Izzy.
That was my prediction was I think
Yeah.
that's the fight to make for him next.
Yeah, he wants Izzy. And the problem with that, and I don't think that, I mean, from a technical standpoint and a business standpoint, I mean, it makes perfect sense. But the reality is that when you're dealing with a guy like Izzy who's had so much stardom,
Mhm.
Kaio's still going to be the B side. So he's going to have to wait for Izzy to when Izzy's ready to fight and do it.
Yeah.
And no telling now what coming off this loss and the other loss and a year off, like no telling when he's going to be ready to fight.
I think that if that fight does happen, it's even if he loses, it's just a lateral move for Kyle. So like I think that is a good fight. Um, do I think he's gonna lose? I don't know. I don't think that either
You think
though.
he beats Izzy?
Yeah, I think he beat Izzy if he shows the cage poise he had last night. See, That's the one thing about Jared is controlling the cage with the footwork. If you could do that on Jared, you could probably do that on anybody in the division. And I think he could beat Izzy if he shows that cage poison discipline. Southpaw, he's going to have to let that left hand go maybe a little bit more right in here to kind of stop Izzy in his tracks. I was going to say slow him down, but he might not even need to slow him down anymore. Just kind of frame him. But yeah, I think he could do that fight. He could slow that fight down and win it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing suggests about him that he loses that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we haven't seen a lot of weakness within him, between anybody from him or anybody on his team, really.
And he's big, man.
Yeah.
Like he's big. Yeah,
he's got a good frame.
I think that's it. How old is he? I don't even
and
know how old.
He's 31. Think about that.
Yeah, he's
31. So he's past the bullshit age where you're like trying to party and impress girls. He's probably wifed up with a kid. I don't know, but 31. So he's making better decisions in life. So he's probably really focused and dedicated on this. But I mean, he grew up in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So and he said he likes to study. He studies fights. He studies the patterns of his opponents. He studies all that stuff. And he comes up with ways to beat guys. And he hasn't failed yet. He hasn't failed. There's nothing suggested he loses that fight.
So if you're the UFC, and it's very plausible to think that Izzy wants to take 10, 12 months off, who do you give him?
You give him the winner of Imavov and Allen.
I think that's kind of a step back.
You think so?
After beating Jared? It's just because the way the division is, it's so top heavy where it's locked up, with DDP and Strickland, and then I guess you have to do that fight though. It's a timing. Like we just talked about timing.
Timing. That's what I'm saying. That's where things get tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Timing is shit. Timing is everything. Dana White said that talking about Alex Bajeda and Ankalaev. Timing is everything. Like Ankalaev, they were going back and forth. Dana was like, "Look, Ankalaev, we booked Ankalaev with a fight. The timing was bad. We booked him with a fight. Now we had to get Khalil Roundtree in there. So, but the same thing with Kyle right now is that the timing could be bad if Izzy doesn't want to fight. If Izzy's like, "Nah, man, screw that, man, I want to come back," then I think the timing is good for Kyle.
Well, I did just see there's another wrinkle to this middleweight division. I did just see that Yuri Prochaska said something that he's willing to drop down.
Yeah, I mean, if Yuri drops down, then a fight with Kyle would make sense. But I don't see Yuri dropping down. And I don't like when guys drop down because, they get everybody's hopes up and think that they're going to be so great in these lighter divisions. But the reality is that when you're dealing with the top five, if you can't beat the top five in your division, you're not beating the top five in the division under you either.
I think he drops down. He loses that 20 pounds. He loses his power.
Yes, he's going to lose a lot. He's going to lose his power, his energy. He's not beating the top five in in 185.
Actually, I'm predicting the future. Quinn Stradamus is coming back after the Pereira prediction that may or may not happen later down the line with the schedule. But
that was the worst prediction ever, too.
Yeah, and then they all got booked. Literally, like 5 of the 6 fighters I mentioned got booked within 2 days. Like the UFC watches this and they're like, "Fuck that kid." So anyway, timing, like maybe 6 months from now. But anyway, I could see if Yuri comes down and takes that fight against Kyle, he gets his legs beat up until he gets knocked out. Like it just because he's gonna have no power and not be able to recover from Kyle.
Well, here's another issue and I suggested Imavov, the winner of Imavov and Brandon Allen. And the only reason why is because Imavov is ranked 4 right now.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's going to be crying for a title shot if he beats Brandon Allen. If Brandon Allen beats Imavov, he's not going to cry for a title shot. He's going to probably cry. He's going to try to get either Izzy or Kyle. That's what he's going to do. So,
I don't think the UFC wants to put either of those two in a title shot either. So Kyle's the perfect sell-off.
Yeah, right, exactly. And Kyle's ready for that. I think he's ready to prove that he can fight for a title. Like he even suggested that he wanted to fight Dricus now, but like I think that he's got not necessarily work to do, but I mean, in terms of building his brand up, he could use a few more fights to build his brand and reputation up. And I think that's important when going into a title fight because you want that support, right? You want people to want you to win and to succeed. And I think that's part of the reason why Ankalaev ain't getting the belt or a shot right now.
You know, and he got booked. It's funny. I do think that Ankalaev that he deserved it over Khalil Roundtree. Now I know we said we both pretty much were on here saying Ankalaev does not beat Alex Pereira, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve the title shot. But you know, he got matched. Who's he matched up with again?
Rakic. Yeah,
Rakic. That's right. So, which is actually a great fight. Yeah, timing again, man. That's people. It's not like it's well, actually, it is like, you know, like we talk all the time. We try to make analogies to other sports. Like they have a schedule. These people have a schedule. Fighters somewhat need to stick to a schedule, but we don't have a set salary, so we gotta fight to get paid.
Get it when you can get it.
Yeah, and you can't sit out. Well, a lot of fighters cannot sit out for, you know, until that title fight just falls on their lap, or until that the right fight falls on the lap, or at least they shouldn't anyway. Sounds like Kyle ain't worried about the right fight coming his way because he's going to make it the right fight, which is exciting as a fan, or people should be excited about.
Well, and that's what Alex did, right? Like, because not everybody was all that excited about Alex until he did what he did to Jamal Hill. He did what he did to Jamal Hill, then he did what he did to Yuri, and now he's able to carry this entire pay-per-view on his shoulders and fight a guy like Khalil Roundtree. I think Khalil Roundtree I don't think he's getting set up because there's an opportunity for Khalil Roundtree. I mean, anytime you put a power puncher in there, it's an opportunity. But I think this is more so, it makes more sense because like they have to do this fight in Salt Lake City. You could never headline it with Juliana Pena and Raquel Pennington. So you put Alex in there and you just give him the next best guy.
Yep.
Somebody that's going to make it exciting because he's a striker. And Alex is going to carry it on his own. Like Alex is a star now to be able to carry this on his own. And then you can do Ankalaev later. Like you get Ankalaev build himself up, build his brand up against Rakic. If he can get past Rakic and in an exciting way, then you can say, all right, now you can fight Alex in a big super fight, like a big pay-per-view. But, you know, it would make no sense to kind of waste that in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like you could set up a really big Super Bowl weekend event with those two fighting.
Yeah, right. Like it's especially, but that's the thing though. Like, but these guys be fucking it up, man. They get out there and they get that out because they don't see it the way the UFC sees it. The UFC sees it like, all right, we're gonna give you a fight, and they're thinking, oh, again, but what if I lose? That's all they think. But what if I lose? So they go out and they put on a very lackluster performance and just squeak by with a win. I won. Give me a title shot. I got the dub. Give me and the UFC was like, yo, we gave you this opportunity so you can go out there and make some noise. And you ain't make no noise.
I have to kind of blame the state of mixed martial arts today on that. You know, granted, it is the fighters that feel that way. You know, first of all, this is a fight. You should be confident. You should be egotistical to an extent. Like, you know, you want to fight the best of it. But, you know, we're in this stage now where the UFC, they say when we're looking at guys, we care about their finish rate. And we're in this era where people protect themselves their first 5 or 6 fights. So they're going to get cozy with these fights. And then, oh, I got to fight a guy with a winning record now. Shit. And then, oh, but that's what's going to get you in the UFC. And then they're so used to protecting to when the training wheels come off and they're at the world-class level. It's like, no, that was yesterday, homie. This is the Yankees, you know, like,
yeah.
And they got to get past that.
And it's like, you know, the thought process behind that fear of, well, what if I lose? Then you have to just admit to yourself that you weren't as good as you thought you were.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's it. Like this, it's as simple as that. Like you're not as good as you thought you were. And you're not as good. And I'm sure that I'm sure that that's the lie they tell themselves, that I am as good as I think I am. But when they get exposed by that, that's the embarrassing part, is because they've been on the internet telling everybody how great they were. But when it's time to take the fight to prove it, they don't want to risk it because they know in their head, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. I don't want to risk this. I'm not as good as I think I am. But that's not what this game is about. It's not about holding on to it. You got to prove it every time.
I feel like when it comes to these elite level promoters, you could say no to them 3 times. I mean, you could say yes to them 3 times to fights, and you say no to them once. That one no takes away that 3 threes, man. Like, you got to be ready to fight and do it and be part of their product. That's it. That's what they care about.
Well, because they don't, because fighters for them are a dime a dozen. It's like,
Yeah.
they're looking for stars and guys that can fight. Like, guys that can fight, they can just find. You could take street beef guys and put them in there, and some fans won't know the difference.
Bum fights. So,
Yeah, you take bum fights, and some fans don't know the difference.
I think about it all the time. Like, people, when they think they're smart talking about this fighters union and stuff, and it's like, man, it's like, first of all, look what happened whenever baseball went on strike. They got the replacement players. Replacement players sucked. When 2 fighters suck, like, they get these replacement fighters, first of all, you'll get so many fighters that'll step in and just put the UFC in their name that aren't that bad. But when you get 2 guys in there that suck at fighting, it's actually the most entertaining thing in the world.
It looks great. It's fantastic. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah. Fans are gonna be at the bar, be like, I don't want to see this world class shit. Let me see this fucking backyard. Like, so that goes exactly what we're saying.
And here's my thing too: is I hate watching bad MMA.
Yeah.
But I love watching bad fighters fight.
Yeah. It's like a car wreck, man.
Yeah, but watching 2 guys that are trying to do good MMA that are bad at it is to me is like, it makes my eyes bleed. It's impossible for me. It's impossible to consume for me. But watching 2 guys that just suck, watching them fight, I love every second of it. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
don't even try to do no technique, man. Just go out there and fight. I love that.
It's like, whoever makes the one less mistake in this round is going to win this fight.
Yeah, man.
That's what it comes down to.
Now, we talked about middleweights. Speaking of middleweights, shout out to my man GM3, Gerald Mershart, who
Gerald
represented and again got himself another win. Listen to this. He's got 35 wins in his MMA career, and 33 of them are by submission. I think my numbers are off, but it's something like that, where it's like 30 something wins and only 2 of them weren't finishes.
Damn.
I mean, this guy is a complete savage when it comes to getting you out of there. Like, he's either going to finish you or he's going to lose. And I think he's content with that. So if you don't get him out of there, he's going to finish you. I got to check the stats on that, but it's a crazy number like that. He has the record now.
If it's 33, 28, whatever. Like,
yeah, it's a crazy number, man. It is a crazy number. And he's a guy I've known for a long time. I had him in camp with us for a lot of Tyron Woodley's fights out in Milwaukee, and he's now down in South Florida at Killcliff. But man, what a inspiration and a role model for fighters to look up to, for a guy who was never really the most athletic or talented guy in the room, but just a dude who worked hard and wanted to finish you, and it's working out for him. Can't get rid of him.
I love hearing that, especially with grapplers, because it's so hard to have really good grappling these days in mixed martial arts. Like, because it's so ignored because of what the day and age or whatever. Like, people are really just grappling, training the grappling defense and just doing just to get by. So for you to be that relentless means you got to be in really good shape too, to be that relentless and look for those finishes, especially when you're going against other people on the ground that are just, like I said, they're building that world-class defense. I don't really believe in being world-class in one area of a game, but that's just me. But,
no, that's it. No, you can be. I think so, man. I think so.
I always hated when people would say, like, oh, this dude's got a world-class guillotine, but he sucks everywhere else. So it's like, to me, I'm like, you're either world-class or you're not. But
yeah, well,
I
what's
get
his
it.
name? Cody. What's that fucking the guy's name from?
Oh yeah, Cody. I fought on the same card as him in Canada.
I would suggest it. He had a world-class guillotine. Like no one got out of that thing when he locked it on.
He fought Joe Riggs in Canada the night I fought, and pretty sure he was drunk when he walked to the cage. and he just, that's all he was looking for like a minute, was to see if he can get that guillotine, and that it just wasn't happening. So he got his money, get out of there.
Got his money, got out of there.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting our money and getting out of there, Ryan, it's been a pleasure as always. We're gonna get this money, we're gonna get out of here. Appreciate you, homie. Let's do it again next week. We'll top it up. So if you like the show, make sure that you hit like, share, subscribe, comment. If you didn't like it, still share it, and you can comment. Let me know if you didn't like it. Let me know if I was so full of shit. Tell me. I don't care. I want to hear what you got to say.
I want to hear it too. I want to hear the criticism too, and I'm just going to tell you to go scratch. So
And on that note, Discord is adjourned. Peace out.